Midway through Can't Help Falling in Love, Elvis stepped back from the mic. The music softened. In the front row, a white-haired man in dark glasses gripped a folded cane. The spotlight found him. We're about to tell you the real story of what happened next, and why thousands of strangers left that arena in tears. If you believe kindness can change a room, you'll want to hear this. The brass hit that first sweet note, and the whole building seemed to lean forward. Elvis scanned the front row, and then he stopped. It was late summer, 1974. In Memphis, Tennessee, the Mid-South Coliseum was sold out. More than 10,000 voices packed shoulder to shoulder in the heat. The spotlight swung in slow arcs over the crowd, throwing gold across sequined shirts and foam signs. You could smell hairspray, fresh popcorn, and the faint tang of beer from the concession stands. On stage, Elvis Presley, white jumpsuit catching every beam, had just finished Burning Love. Sweat darkened his collar. The crowd's applause was still crashing against the walls when the band shifted into the gentle intro of Can't Help Falling in Love. From the back row to the stage lip, fans swayed, holding scarves and photographs in the air. But Elvis's eyes were moving, searching. Witnesses say he scanned the front rows like he was looking for someone in particular. That's when he saw him. A man in his late 50s or early 60s, white hair neatly combed, a pressed navy blue suit despite the heat, dark glasses that hid his eye. In his hands, folded neatly across his lap, was a white cane. Next to him sat a woman, maybe his daughter, her hand resting on his arm. She leaned close, speaking into his ear over the music. He nodded slightly, a faint smile on his face. The people around them had noticed too. A ripple of recognition moved through the seats. An usher whispered to another, just loud enough to be caught by a fan nearby. That's a World War II vet, lost his sight in Normandy, they think. The brass section swelled, the tempo steady. Elvis sang the first line, but his gaze stayed fixed on that man, close on Elvis's face, focused, almost soft. Then a slow pan to the veteran, hands tightening on his cane as though steadying himself for something. From the balcony you could see Elvis take a half step back from the mic, still singing. The crowd probably thought he was just playing to the room, giving the front row a little extra attention. But then his free hand lifted, not to wave, not to point, but to signal something. At the edge of the stage, the band's bass player saw it first, then the drummer eased the beat, cymbals fading to a shimmer. The music softened, almost to a whisper. Something was happening. Nobody knew why Elvis was doing it, but whatever it wasn't part of the show. In section 104, a woman lowered her camera and just stared. I'd seen him give scarves to fans, she would recall later, but this was different. He looked concerned. Elvis stepped forward, closer to the lip of the stage. His eyes didn't leave the veteran. One more subtle gesture to the band. Keep playing, but softly. The lead guitar dropped to a gentle arpeggio. Fans in the front rows leaned in, murmuring to each other. A few stood to see over the heads in front. The air felt different now. Less like a concert, more like a conversation that 10,000 people were trying to overhear. The woman beside the veteran looked up and realized Elvis was coming closer. Her lips parted, as if to say something, but she didn't move. The man straightened in his seat. Elvis stopped just above them, one foot on the stage edge, and looked down. The song still played, faint and tender, when Elvis made a small motion with his hand and started down toward the edge of the stage. Elvis lifted one hand. The music didn't stop. It folded in on itself. The drums faded. The brass went silent. Only a soft guitar remained. A hush fell over the Mid-South Coliseum, broken only by the hum of the amps. Stage lights dimmed, until one narrow beam found the man in the dark glasses. The rest of the crowd melted into shadow. You could hear the rustle of programs, the faint squeak of an usher's shoe on the concrete. 10,000 people holding their breath. From the lip of the stage, Elvis leaned forward. Witnesses say he spoke. Just one short sentence, meant only for the man in front of him. The veteran tilted his head to listen. His hand shifted slightly on the white cane. Knuckles pale, the woman beside him touched his arm. She nodded once. Her eyes shone in the light. Lashes wet. Elvis straightened. Then he did something unusual. Something he rarely did mid-show. He stepped away from his mic, toward the stairs at the side of the stage. The spotlight followed. The crowd murmured. A fan in the balcony whispered, "He's bringing him up. He's really bringing him up." Security moved forward, instinctively. But Elvis gave a quick shake of the head. One guard stepped aside, and another actually held the rail as the veteran rose. The man's movements were careful but steady. He tucked the cane under one arm. His free hand reached forward, until it found Elvis's. They clasped. A firm, two-handed grip. Elvis covering the man's hand like he was holding something fragile. From the back rows, you could see the glow of Elvis's rhinestones in the spotlight. From the front row you could see his eyes locked on the man's face. The first step up was slow. Elvis guided him, one hand on the rail, one hand holding the veteran's. The crowd began to clap in rhythm, not to the song anymore, but to the pace of his climb. Halfway up, the veteran paused. Elvis leaned in, saying something again, this time with a faint smile. The man nodded, took a breath, and continued. When they reached the top, the band held the vamp, guitar and piano, circling the same gentle chord, keeping the room suspended. Elvis didn't let go of his hand. Instead, he reached to his own neck and pulled free the white scarf he'd been wearing since the start of the set. Sweat had dampened it along the edges. He folded it once in his hands, then draped it carefully over the veteran's shoulder. A wave of applause moved through the crowd like a physical thing. Some fans stood, others stayed silent, hands clasped in front of their mouths. The veteran reached up, fingertips brushing the scarf like he was memorizing it by touch. His lips moved. Maybe a thank you, maybe something private. Elvis took a step back, still holding the man's hand. He looked out at the audience for the first time since leaving the mic. His smile was small, almost shy. Nobody knew yet what he was about to do with this man on stage. The moment could have ended right there. A scarf, a handshake, a nod. But Elvis wasn't finished. The band, sensing something was building, shifted almost imperceptibly. The piano softened even more. The lights adjusted, throwing a second spotlight across center stage. Elvis turned to the veteran, patted his hand, and nodded toward that glowing circle. The man hesitated, sensing the open space ahead. Elvis gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. With the scarf still on his shoulders, the veteran let Elvis guide him forward, toward the center of the stage, and the waiting mic. The spotlight wide. Two figures stood in its center, one in a white jumpsuit glittering with rhinestones, the other in a dark suit, head tilted toward the sound. Elvis led the veteran to the mic stand. He didn't rush. Every step was deliberate. The crowd's eyes fixed on. The scarf trailed down the man's chest, swaying gently with each movement. At center stage, Elvis turned the veteran so he faced the crowd. The man couldn't see them, but he stood straight, chin lifted. The audience, sensing the gravity of the moment, went almost completely silent. You could hear the faint hiss of the stage monitors. Elvis leaned into the mic, voice soft but rich. "We're gonna do this one together." The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, whistles. But it settled quickly, the sound fading. As the first gentle piano notes returned, Elvis started the verse alone, his tone slow and tender. The veteran's head moved slightly, following the melody. Then, as Elvis reached the second line, the man's voice joined in, low, a little shaky, but perfectly on time. A wave went through the crowd. Some covered their mouths, others wiped their eyes. From the wings, a backup singer whispered to another, "He knows every word." They sang in harmony, Elvis adjusting his phrasing ever so slightly to match the man's tempo. The veteran never missed a lyric. His voice carried the weight of years, of memory, of something deeper than just knowing the song. Halfway through the chorus, Elvis stepped back, letting the veteran's voice take the lead for one line. It was brief, but it was electric. The sound of 10,000 people holding perfectly still. Some say they saw Elvis blink away tears. From the third row, a fan swore later, You could see his throat tighten. He was fighting. The band played softer, the guitarist watching Elvis's every move, ready to follow his lead if the tempo shifted. The veteran gripped the mic stand with one hand, the other brushing the scarf at his collar. He tilted his face toward Elvis's voice, smiling faintly between lines. Then Elvis stepped in again, their voices blending for the final chorus. It wasn't the polished, practiced harmony of his regular show. It was raw, human, and more powerful for it. Nobody knew what Elvis would do after the song ended. Would he send the man back to his... Would he give him a bow and move on? Or was something else coming? The final note lingered, guitar and piano fading together. The veteran's voice held steady until the last moment, then trailed off, lips still moving in silence. The arena didn't explode into applause right away. For a split second, it was utterly still, the kind of stillness you can feel in your chest. Then the sound came, starting with a few claps in the back, and swelling into a standing ovation. Elvis didn't bow, he didn't wave. He stepped closer to the veteran, resting a hand on his shoulder. Then into the mic, he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this man has more courage than I'll ever know." The ovation grew louder. Fans whistled, shouted, even stamped their feet. But Elvis didn't look at them. He looked at the man beside him, eyes warm, hand still steady on his shoulder. Elvis leaned in again, speaking low, so only the veteran could hear. Then he guided him toward the side of the stage. But instead of letting go, he stopped halfway, turning back to face the crowd. The ovation wouldn't die. Elvis took one breath, then did something he rarely did on stage. He set the microphone aside and opened his arms. Center stage glowed like a small island. The veteran stood inside the light, scarf at his collar, lips parted as if the music were still there. The band held the soft vamp, brushes whispering on the snare. You could hear the faint click of a camera, the hum of the amps. Elvis stepped in and wrapped the man in a full, lasting embrace. Not a quick squeeze for the crowd, a true hold. His chin rested near the veteran's temple. His hands crossed the man's back and stayed. The veteran's fingers closed around the back of the suit, feeling the raised beads and seams. 10,000 people went quiet again, the applause folding into a hush. Up close, Elvis's lips moved. A few words only they shared. The veteran nodded against his shoulder. His breath came slow and even. Witnesses recall Elvis's eyes slipping shut for a second, as if he were listening to something only he could hear. Maybe the echo of the chorus, maybe the weight of the man's year. The hug didn't end fast. It held, then softened. Elvis loosened his arms but kept one hand on the veteran's shoulder, steady as a guardrail. The other hand found the scarf and straightened it. He gave a small pat. "There you go," then turned them so the man faced the crowd again. House lights crept up a notch. Faces surfaced from darkness. Mothers, sons, old fans with homemade pins. The ovation returned. Not wild now, but warm and rolling. Elvis guided the veteran a step toward the stairs, then paused. He glanced to the bandleader and lifted 2 fingers. The guitarist eased the volume down, until the strings barely spoke. The room settled into that fragile quiet, where even a footstep can feel loud. Elvis leaned close and spoke again, and the veteran smiled. A private smile that lifted the corners of his mouth. He reached out with his cane, touching the stage to find the edge. Elvis's hand caught his wrist gently and redirected him, saving a misstep by an inch. The crowd exhaled as one. A security guard stepped forward, but Elvis waved him back. He wanted this to be there. He kept his palm at the veteran's elbow, guiding him at the gentle pace of trust. As they moved, a few fans near the aisle rose and placed hands over their hearts. Others began a soft, unplanned hum of the chorus they had just heard. According to a woman who sat behind them, the daughter whispered, "Daddy, you did it." As they neared the steps, she had tears on her cheeks and a crumpled program in her fist. The veteran tilted his head toward her voice. Elvis paused, let them touch hands, and gave the daughter a nod. It could have ended right here. Escort to the seat. A bow. Lights up, the show resumes. But the tension in the room said there was one more beat coming. Something beyond a song. And a scar. Elvis felt it too. You could see it in the way he squared his shoulders, as if preparing to say what the music couldn't. He turned them to face the audience one last time. The veteran stood straight, the scarf bright against the darks. The band's vamp thinned to almost nothing. A heartbeat on the kick, a breath of piano. Elvis lifted the mic, looked across the sea of faces and said, "I think he deserves more than a song." The crowd roared, waiting for the encore. But Elvis wasn't reaching for his guitar. He was thinking about what would happen after the lights went dark. On stage, the veteran stood beside him, scarf still draped across his shoulders. The applause surged again, filling the arena like rolling thunder. Elvis let it wash over them for a beat, then leaned toward the mic. "Friends, I want you to meet a man who's given more than most of us could imagine." The veteran shifted slightly, head turning toward the sound of Elvis's voice. The audience cheered again, and Elvis raised a hand for quiet. He served this country in World War II, gave his sight so the rest of us could see nights like this. A long, low ooh moved through the crowd. Not surprise exactly, but reverence, the kind that pulls a room together. Elvis turned, placed a hand on the man's back, and gave a single slow bow toward him. The audience stood and followed, a wave of bodies leaning forward, clapping with open palms. The band eased into the opening of American Trilogy, slow and deliberate. But Elvis didn't sing right away. He let the music hold the moment. The veteran stayed beside him for the first verse, Elvis's hand never leaving his shoulder. Only after the first chorus did he guide him carefully back to his seat, pausing for the daughter's hand again, and a final nod. The rest of the show went on. The hits, the smiles, the scarves tossed into eager hands. But anyone who was there will tell you, the night's heart had already happened. Fade to 1 week later. A small single-story home in Memphis, front porch shaded by an old oak tree. Late afternoon sun slants across the steps, catching the brass number plate by the door. Inside, the veteran sits in an armchair, cane leaning against the wall when the knock comes. The daughter answers. On the porch stands a deliveryman, holding a large, well-packed box. The label reads, Graceland. She brings it inside, sets it on the low table in front of her father. His fingers run over the taped seams, feeling the ridges. With care she cuts it open. Inside, wrapped in brown paper, is a brand new record player, glossy black, with polished chrome knobs. Beneath it another layer, a complete set of Elvis Presley's albums to date. Every cover, every sleeve stacked in order. The daughter lifts them one by one, reading the titles aloud. The veteran's hand rests on each as she speaks, his smile widening with each name. At the bottom of the box, under the final LP, is a white envelope. Inside, on heavy paper in Elvis's unmistakable hand, "You'll always have a seat in the front row, E." The veteran's hand tightened on the page. His daughter said later he ran his thumb over the ink like it was bread. He just sat there for a minute, she told a local reporter. Didn't say anything. Then he smiled, real soft, and said, "Guess I'll be hearing him every day now." And he did. Every morning, he put on How Great Thou Art, side A first. He'd sit in that same chair, hands folded, listening. Some say, Elvis sent it quietly, without telling a soul outside his circle. There was no mention in the papers, no press photos, just a private kindness that lived in the memory of those who saw it, and those who heard it told. Years later, after the veteran passed, his daughter kept the record player. The scarf stayed too, folded in a drawer, the faint scent of cologne still clinging to the fabric. The note, she kept it in a small frame by her bed, the paper worn at the edges from time. In an interview decades later, she held it to the camera. The handwriting had faded a little, but the words were still clear. She smiled, almost to herself, and said, "People remember the songs. I'll always remember the silence after that hug." For those in the Coliseum that night, it was a concert. For one man, it was proof that kindness can find you in the loudest room in the world. Sometimes the greatest ovation isn't for the star, it's for the quiet courage they choose to honor. If this moment moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop a room, and tell me in the comments, what's the most powerful act of kindness you've ever witnessed?